Hey folks, my name is Kyle. I am a professor of pop culture and I have recently started collecting action figures related to my favorite horror movies, and that would be, of course, for me, the Universal monster movies. Of course, to anyone who knows me, I have been interested in these movies since I was young. I love to talk about them and collect things related to them, and today I wanted to talk to you about the NECA Universal Horror line. And if you have been following the rest of the videos on the channel, if you're new, welcome, by the way. If you've been following the other videos on the channel, you know that the NECA Horror line is what got me back into collecting action figures after years and years, and I am reviewing each of the Universal monsters. I'm starting with the black and white series and then moving on, hopefully, to some of the other figures as well. So today's review is going to be focused on one of the most famous and arguably most popular Universal monster films, Dracula. And you can see this box with one of the original posters on it, and just showing off, some fandom. I have the Walmart glow-in-the-dark special edition Blu-ray version, and I have recently, as kind of a part of a birthday deal, picked up the Alex Ross cover of the Dracula Blu-ray Steelbook. I think it looks great. So I am a fan of Bela Lugosi, have read a bit about his life and tried to learn a little bit about what things were like when he was working on the film Dracula and throughout the rest of his life. This review is going to be about the figure based on Lugosi's Dracula. I'm a big fan. I'm excited to share my thoughts about the figure. Let's jump in. I like to review 5 areas of the figures that I talk about, and this is just kind of my own personal opinion as a consumer and as a fan. So I'm doing just a little kitchen table review, as I like to call them here, and I evaluate 5 areas: a figure's packaging, its sculpt, articulation, accessories, and pricing. I want to go ahead and just jump in on the packaging. So this is a great looking cover, and of course it's based on the original Universal Monster cover for Dracula, and just like the original poster as compared to other Universal Monster posters, there's a little bit more color and vibrance, and I think kind of mystery and intrigue, evocativeness that's captured in the imagery on the front of this poster and this figure. So it's a great poster cover. There is a little bit of info here that is faded, so I would have personally liked to see a little bit more about see this show up a little more, the info about the movie and the director and the actors and everything. Maybe give Lugosi a little bit more of a highlight up front. Otherwise, these colors look really good, and I think it pops when you see something like this in the store. And they're doing something similar, some similar business up here on the front. So they've taken this little piece from the poster and added it to a banner on the top of the figure. I think that looks really, really good. I'm losing my background here. Okay, so the front of the box looks good with maybe just a little more attention there. And then, as with all of these figures, we have some posing and photography of the figure itself, including some poses and some different sculpts and accessories. So we can look all around the box and see how they have done that there. The back and sides of the box do, I think, a pretty nice job of showcasing those head sculpts and poses. I also think it's fairly easy to see, unlike with some of the Universal monster figures. So the lighting is such that you can really see the different features of the costumes and the different hand and head sculpts and so forth. They even get the famous Cucaloris shot, if I'm pronouncing that right, the one that's often accompanied with Venetian blinds, but you've got just the just the little strip of light across Lugosi's eyes. And of course, in the film, that was used to indicate when Dracula was hypnotizing some of his victims. So that's a pretty cool capture there. I do think that the poses shown here fail to capture some of what we might want to know about accessories. We can bring this a little further forward, and there is information about accessories here on the box, but in order to know all about them or to have a sense of what they look like, you're going to have to do a couple of things. You can open the window here, so now we have another pose, and we have extra accessories. So we have the top hat, we have a different sculpt for the hand, we have a cane, and if you look in the window, which is going to be a little bit difficult here with the lighting that I have, you can see more of the hand sculpts and the cane, and you can also see the bat accessory on the side there. I'll talk a little more about those as we go along and get to the accessories section. And inside the box, you have a Carfax Abbey background. That's a cardboard insert that you can use with photography for the figure. So I'll show that off once I take the figure out in just a moment. And on the inside, where we have the little plastic there, I think the accessories are held pretty well together by some plastic slats that go over the pieces, and this figure kind of holds together in a really nice way. I think it holds together a little better than some of the other NECA figures, but one thing that you have to kind of look out for is what to do with the cape. So if you can see, my Dracula just wears his cape kind of draped over him now that I have removed the cape from its original packaging. But once you open the cape, which is stuck to the back of the Carfax Abbey insert in the back of the box, once you take it out, you've got to figure out where to put it. There's no exact designated spot. So that's just a thing to think about and keep an eye on. Overall, I think the packaging is fairly attractive and interesting and catches the eye, but it does have a couple of downsides that some of the other figures don't as well. I'm going to give the overall packaging a 3.5 out of 5. Next, I want to talk about the sculpt. So here you have the Lugosi Dracula figure in all of its glory. And we've got the Carfax Abbey background. I think that's Carfax Abbey there, with all the brick and then the cell and everything. So you've got the background there. If I move our friend the Count slightly over, you can see that there is a tear in mine, and that is because the cardboard insert also has Dracula's cape stuck to the back of it. So I was less careful than I should have been in removing the tape for the cape. I have also purchased other NECA monster figures that came with capes, and it wasn't so destructive getting it to come off. So I think that's more my bad than anything. But yeah, here you go. Get a good look at the Count. I think this sculpt is really cool. NECA is always great with faces, so we're just gonna hone in for a second here. Look at that. Look right at Bela Lugosi in the eye there. I think the head sculpt looks great. I'm gonna rotate a little so that you can see other details here. Things that I have kind of paid attention to on this head sculpt include you can see all of the lining for the hair here, so it looks slicked back just like in the movies. When you look right at the face, you have, let me refocus here, you've got some furrowing of the brow. That's some nice line detail there. You have smile lines, you have the famous cleft chin, you've got Lugosi's kind of big lips there, the 5 o'clock shadow. If you can tell, you've got to look really close to get the 5 o'clock shadow, which I think is a nice subtle thing there. And most importantly, those piercing eyes. Somehow they captured Lugosi's hypnotic stare, which I think is really, really cool. So the head sculpt is great. I think the other head sculpts are really cool too. So we have the angry version where Dracula is preparing to attack or bite, and alternatively we have Dracula just smiling, facing forward and smiling, which is so spooky. That is a really great job that they've done on capturing Lugosi's likeness. So in regard to the rest of the sculpt, I think the tux looks pretty good. We can do a turnaround here. You've got the cool tails. There's a lot of wrinkle marks. There's a nice shine on the body of the figure here. On the front, you get a lot of details on the buttons and the watch and the bow tie, and so many things going on there that are pretty cool. I also really like that there's a variety of shades on the jacket here, so you have a little bit darker paint on the lapels, which makes it contrast with the rest of the tux. I think that's a really great, helpful thing to do, especially for these black and white figures. The jacket and pants have all of these nice crinkles on them that give a little bit of detail, so it looks like he pressed his clothes and that they are definitely being worn here. We've got lots of fine detail on the rest of the figure too. So the hands, this is the most that I'm going to talk about hands in any videos. Hands look great here. So you see the gloves, you have the lines on the gloves, you've got wrinkles, you've got a ring, and besides the gloved hands, Dracula also comes with several other hands that also look pretty good. So you've got the clutching fingers reaching outward. You can see the fingernails. You can see the wrinkles on the fingers. You can see the veins in the hand. So these are pretty detailed extra accessories here, but we're not talking about the accessories themselves. We're going to be just focused on the sculpt right now. Like Frankenstein's monster, the jacket arms are painted on rather than actually a part of the rubber jacket piece. So that's something that might be a little distracting at times, but I would argue that this is better hidden because of the crinkles in the jacket, and also some joints down here are better hidden because of the way that they've sculpted the suit pants as well. So I think the superior suit sculpt is definitely going to be for the ultimate Dracula figure here. Shoes have some nice detail too. I don't remember if I mentioned that, but we do have, let me refocus there for you. I don't know if my camera wants to. It doesn't want you to see the shoes. The shoes, you might have to take my word for it. You can see laces, and you can see, or at least I can see some laces here. There we go. So we've got some lacing, we've got some wrinkles here, we've got some lines. You can see where there's a specific heel, so that works really well in terms of showcasing the detail of the figure. The one thing that I really don't care for all that much is the fact that there are really obvious lines in the elbow joints that are not really covered well by the sculpt. So those do give the figure a pretty decent sense of articulation in that particular joint, but it's just so obvious. There's one other potential drawback that's a lot more subtle, and that is you can see a factory print line across the top of the head there. So it's unfortunate that the hair couldn't cover that a little bit differently. But overall, I think I was challenged to sort of look pretty hard for things that I wish they would have done differently with the sculpt of the character. I think the figure looks really good, at least as good as the other figures that I've talked about on the channel so far. And aside from the sculpt, I am ready for us to talk about articulation. For me, the sculpt is above average. Not only above average, but it is really good. So the sculpt score is going to be a 4.5 out of 5. Let's talk about articulation. I tried to get a little bit more of an aggressive stance on the figure here. You've got the attack mode kind of face sculpt, and you've got the hands that are curled out there with the fingers reaching outward. I think this character can look really scary, and the figure has a lot of accessories and poses and points of articulation that make that possible. So to start with, I kind of like to do the head-to-toe thing. The neck movement is really great. He can turn his head all the way to the sides or around or whatever you want. And it doesn't tilt back super far, but that doesn't really bother me much for this particular figure. What's great is that he can tilt it down forward and make it look a little more menacing that way. I think that's really cool. So really easy to tilt down. Also, the head can move on the neck, so you should be able to see that there's the neck piece there, and then of course there's a line showing where the head meets the neck piece. That's not where the head comes off, by the way. Every head comes with its own neck. Let's put your hand down there, Bella. Okay, so you can see the neck a little bit better, and maybe as a comparison here. So each headpiece comes with a really long neck that snaps in down below the collar. And so the head doesn't really move around that much. I mean, it's great that we got the extra technical point of articulation there, but basically you're moving the neck on the ball to get the articulation here. The arms have surprisingly great movement. I was pleasantly surprised, not only by how much they can move around, but also they go pretty far to the sides. You can get a pretty wide kind of wingspan there, if I can borrow a bat metaphor. And if you're doing things like draping a cape over his arms, that looks really, really great too. The legs also move pretty far forward and pretty far back, right? So you can do things like a kneeling position if you can get it to balance. You can get crouching positions if you can get him to balance. Normally the crouch works pretty okay. So there we go. We have the crouching attack position. Probably looking up a little bit more. So there you go. I mean, you can do wild and wacky things too, like he can do the splits if you want him to do the splits. Didn't do that in the movie, so I don't know why you'd want to do that with the figure, but hey, you've got the option to if you want to. And the waist has some good swivel, nice swivel over here in the hips, and that's pretty well covered by the rubber waistcoat piece, so you don't get thrown off by that point of articulation standing out, kind of like the arms do. And the feet actually have pretty decent balance. I think the feet typically work pretty well. I haven't had too much trouble standing this figure up. The knees bend forward and back, but then they also swivel, and so that's pretty nice. And the feet do a good job of, they're just big enough to capture everything that's needed for balance without looking goofy, but they also have the ability to move forward and back, right? So there's a little rocking ability there, and we can turn them a little bit. There's a little less movement there. There's not a joint to let them really move side to side with much ease here. So that is a limitation, but it's not one that I have felt has made any kind of significant impact on my ability to pose the figure or use the toy. I think articulation works really well here, and there's very little I can think of that I would have wanted to do differently on this particular figure. So the articulation is going to go ahead and get a 4 out of 5. NECA's Ultimate Dracula figure comes with great accessories. I was really excited because among the other figures I had bought before I got to the Dracula figure, it was mostly just different head and hand sculpts. Sometimes they might have one extra accessory or something to go with it, so I was pretty excited. I want to start with what I think is, it's just fine. So he has a cane, which we really want Dracula to have. It's basic, and a lot of the figures have it, but the cane is, something that we would want for this figure. So that's good. The things that I think are really exciting is, in case you haven't figured it out yet, I'm a big fan of the head sculpts. I think that each of these sculpts really capture all of the famous movie expressions and moments, especially for the famously restrained Lugosi, who played Dracula, is very cold and cool and didn't use a lot of overt facial expression in the film. He used a lot of acting with his eyes and carrying his energy in his body. So we get just 3 head sculpts to make room for some other accessories, but those sculpts really capture the major movie moments in terms of his facial expressions, and I thought that was great. There are 7 hands available, and the hands all give decent opportunity to use different accessories and to show off different poses, so I think those work pretty well. They give a fair opportunity for unique expressions from the figure. And one thing I was really excited about was the cape. I think the cape is cool. It was heavier than I expected it to be, and this collar piece is actually pretty tough. It's more plastic than rubber, so you can put the cape on the figure, and basically the neck piece is going to clip on to the collar, and I think the collar looks great. I think it looks great. And because the cape is kind of heavy, it might take some doing, but you can drape it and get it to hold its place. So you get poses like this where he's holding the cape with one hand and letting it flow with the other. The cape looks really cool. It stays attached to the character. The cloth material is sturdy enough to hold up with this figure, but it also, the texture doesn't look out of place when you're attaching it to a plastic figure. So the cape is really cool. I think it works great, and I'm happy that the cape with the solid collar is included there. So the only other figure I have with a cape is Phantom of the Opera, and with the Phantom, it's nice to have some wire pieces to help shape the cape a little bit. But honestly, with Dracula, you really don't need it because Dracula himself is so posable that it is easy to get the cape to kind of do what you want around his arms and around his torso. So it's not difficult to pose this cape even without other pieces in it. And the cape for Phantom is attached by putting a little piece around the neck of the figure, and then you snap the head on over it. I do like having the collar that just sort of clips on for Count Dracula here. Pretty cool looking. Pretty cool looking. I am pleased with that. Alright, so we'll leave the Count looking at us here. Another nice touch is that the Count comes with a top hat, and this is hard plastic, but it's just flexible enough that you can push it ever so slightly down on the Count's head, and it will stay no problem, right? Like there's no big risk of it falling off if you move the figure around. And it gives you some opportunity to play with lighting and kind of shade his face or his eyes or what have you, whatever you want to do with the figure. Finally, there is a base that comes with a clear rod. The rod is kind of still visible in a lot of photography unless you're doing some advanced stuff here. But the idea is for the rod to be more or less invisible. And then there's this cool alternate form of Count Dracula, his bat persona. And the bat is great. It has a lot of detail. It has color variety. So it's really looks pretty good. And it does have quite a bit of mobility on the stand because there's a ball joint here. So you pop the bat into the ball joint, which is tougher for me than I remembered, but once it snaps in, you've got some, there we go, we got the snap. You can do several things to potentially mask the rod there, so maybe behind the cape it's not as obvious. But there we go. So we've got the bat form of Count Dracula as well, and it can rotate quite a bit on this ball joint, so you can get a number of different poses out of it if you want to. It is, again, kind of tough to deal with the rod in the photos if you are a figure photography person, unless you're photoshopping it, but I don't really know what else one would do with that. And I'm just happy to have the bat form available. So for me, this figure came with all the accessories that I could have imagined or wanted from the movie. Maybe the candlestick or something, but other versions of this figure that have been released already have that. So for the accessories coming with the black and white Ultimate figure, I had everything I was looking for. I don't have any major complaints about what came with the figure. There wasn't anything that left me disappointed that there was some scene from the movie I couldn't recreate because I didn't have access to the stuff I needed. So accessories, I am pleased to give this figure a 5 out of 5. The very last thing to review is price point. And as all of the other solo NECA Universal monster figures, the pricing is going to be set at $35 to $40. To me, this figure has a great sculpt with above average articulation, and there's several cool accessories that come with it beyond just the basic hands and head interchangeable pieces. You get the bat, you get the hat, you get the cool cape. Lots of things that makes this figure feel like you're getting bonus stuff. I felt really treated when I bought this figure, I am extremely happy with it, as much as any other recent purchase for a NECA action figure. So I'm going to go ahead and give the pricing a 5 out of 5. To wrap up this review, I really like the figure. So Dracula had a 4 on packaging, 4.5 on sculpt, 4.5 on articulation, 5 on accessories, and 5 on pricing. That's basically going to come out to an A- score, but I am willing to give some extra credit for those accessories and perhaps for the sculpt, which looks so good. I would rate this figure a solid A. This is certainly one of the best action figure purchases I feel like I've made, and I have brought this figure out more than any of the other figures. I think it works really well. So NECA's Universal Count Dracula figure in black and white comes in with an A score. I really enjoyed being able to talk through my feelings for this figure and my thoughts on this figure. I hope that y'all enjoyed. If you did, feel free to tell me about it in the comments or leave a like. and I will hope to be uploading more reviews for the NECA Universal Monster line for you very soon. Take care.